We thought it was just another forgotten relic, a rusted shell buried under decades of dust. But when we opened the trunk of that 1967 Mustang, after 40 long years of silence, what we found inside didn't just leave us speechless. It rewrote everything we thought we knew about the car's past. There's a certain kind of magic in finding something that time itself seemed to have forgotten. For car lovers like us, the 1967 Mustang is more than a machine. It's a symbol of freedom, rebellion, and craftsmanship from an era when cars had soul. We'd heard rumors about a Mustang hidden in a barn outside town, untouched since the early 80s. But we never imagined that behind those creaky wooden doors, beneath layers of dust and cobwebs, lay not only a piece of automotive history, but also a heartbreaking story sealed away for generations. The story began with a phone call from an old farmer named Richard. His late brother, Tom, had been a mechanic in the 1970s and a die-hard Ford enthusiast. When Tom passed away in 1983, the barn where he worked was locked and left untouched. Richard couldn't bring himself to step inside. Decades passed, seasons changed, and the barn became part of the landscape, swallowed by weeds and memories. When Richard finally decided to sell the property, he asked if we wanted to take a look inside before it was cleared. He said, "There's an old car in there. I think it's a Mustang, but I haven't seen it since my brother's funeral." That one line was enough to send chills down our spines. We grabbed our gear and hit the road before the sun had even risen. When we arrived, the morning mist hung thick around the barn. The doors groaned as we pushed them open, and a wave of stale air hit us, a mix of oil, hay, and time itself. Our flashlights swept across forgotten tools, old posters, and finally, there it was, the unmistakable fastback silhouette of a 1967 Mustang GT, buried under a thick blanket of dust. Its paint, once a vibrant candy apple red, had faded to a ghostly shade of brown. The tires had melted into the ground, and spiderwebs clung to every corner. But even in that state, the car radiated something powerful, an aura of pride and pain, as if it had been waiting all these years for someone to remember it. We brushed off the dust on the hood, revealing the faint shimmer of the original color, and right there on the front fender, the GT badge still gleamed. Then we opened the door. Inside, the air was heavy with age. The seats were cracked, the dash coated in grime, yet the steering wheel felt solid, purposeful. It was like touching a piece of frozen time, but nothing compared to the moment we popped the trunk. Inside, under an old army blanket, was a small wooden box. On top, in faded ink, were the words, "For Richard." We brought the box out into the sunlight. Inside were personal items, photographs of two brothers standing proudly beside the same Mustang, dated 1968, a set of service records meticulously handwritten, and a letter. The letter was from Tom, dated just weeks before his death. It read, "If you're reading this, Rich, then the car and I have both been silent too long. This Mustang was the first thing I ever bought with my own money. I rebuilt it after working nights at the gas station. Every bolt, every screw, done by hand. I kept it not for me, but for us, for the memories we made when we were young and the roads were endless." The words hit Richard like a storm. He stood silently, tears welling up in his eyes as he realized his brother had left him one last message, a promise that even death hadn't erased. This wasn't just a barn find anymore. It was a time capsule of love, passion, and brotherhood. We knew instantly that this car deserved more than just admiration. It deserved resurrection. We towed the Mustang back to our garage, careful not to damage its fragile body. The restoration process was grueling but sacred. Every piece we touched felt like uncovering another layer of history. The engine, a 390 cubic inch V8, was seized from decades of sitting still. It took weeks of cleaning, oiling, and careful coaxing before it finally roared to life again. The same deep, throaty growl that had once echoed through the streets of the late 60s. We sourced period-correct parts, preserved the original paint tone, and even restored the interior stitching to match the 1967 design. Each day in the shop felt like working alongside the ghost of Tom himself, guiding our hands with his unspoken pride. Richard visited often, watching quietly, sometimes sharing stories about their childhood, how he and Tom would race imaginary Mustangs down dirt roads and dream of open highways. As the project neared completion, it became clear this restoration wasn't just about reviving a car. It was about healing a wound that had been open for 40 years. The day we finished, the entire garage fell silent. The 1967 Mustang GT stood there, gleaming under the fluorescent lights, reborn in every sense. Richard approached it slowly, running his hand along the hood, tracing the lines his brother had once shaped. Then he asked for the keys. We handed them over, and he sat in the driver's seat, his brother's seat, for the first time in 4 decades. As he turned the key, the V8 came alive, shaking the room with that unmistakable rumble. Tears rolled down his face as he whispered, "He'd be proud." We took the car outside, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause. Richard drove it down the old country road, the same one they'd raced on as kids. Dust rose behind him, sunlight glinting off the chrome. When he returned, he parked, turned off the engine, and sat quietly for a long while. Then he opened the glove compartment, and there, folded neatly, was another letter. None of us had seen it before. It read, "Rich, don't let the world forget what we built together." That was the moment everything clicked. The Mustang wasn't just his brother Ace's legacy. It was their bond immortalized in steel and soul. Restoring that 1967 Mustang changed the way we looked at classic cars forever. We used to see them as collectibles, trophies of a bygone era. But that car reminded us that every machine has a heartbeat, a story forged by human hands, emotions, and dreams. The scratches, the dents, the dust, they weren't flaws. They were fingerprints of a life lived. For Richard, the Mustang became a bridge between past and present, a way to keep his brother's spirit alive every time the engine started. Even for us, it was a lesson in patience, passion, and purpose. We'd restored dozens of cars before, but none carried the weight of this one. When the project was finally done, we didn't just see a Mustang. We saw 2 brothers reunited through time, one in body, one in memory. Today, that 1967 Mustang sits proudly in Richard's garage, gleaming like new, yet carrying the soul of every mile it ever traveled. It's more than metal and rubber. It's a story, a heartbeat that refuses to fade. Sometimes, when the wind is just right, Richard takes it out for a drive at sunset, the same golden hour his brother loved most. The sound of that roaring V8 cuts through the still air like a memory reborn. And for anyone who happens to see that red Mustang speeding down the road, they not just witnessing a restored classic, they re-witnessing a love that time couldn't bury. Because some cars aren't just found, they find you